A millionaire in a wheelchair. She was alone at the wedding until a single father asked her, "Would you dance with me? Would you dance with me?" The words floated in the ballroom air like an unexpected melody, making Isabella Tan look up from her clasped hands. Her heart stopped for an instant as she met the brown eyes of a stranger who looked at her with a warmth she had forgotten existed. But that had been barely an hour ago. Now, as she observed the chrome wheels of her chair reflecting the crystal chandelier lights, Isabella remembered how this night had begun, a night that promised to be one more in her endless collection of social tortures. "Isabella, darling, are you sure you want to come?" Her cousin Grace had asked that morning over the phone with that carefully modulated voice everyone used since the accident. No one would be offended if the cripple preferred to stay home, right? Isabella had interrupted, feeling bitterness climb her throat like bile. "I'm going, Grace. It's your wedding." Now, 3 hours later, Isabella regretted her decision. The ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton Millionaire Singapore was filled with whispers disguised as elegant conversations, pitying glances wrapped in compassionate smiles, and the deafening symphony of heels she would never wear again. "Look how beautiful Isabella is," she heard a distant aunt murmur. "So brave, the poor dear." After what happened with Alexander, the name of her ex-fiancé pierced her chest like a familiar dagger. 3 years. 3 years since Alexander Wong, heir to a textile fortune, and the man who swore to love her in sickness and in health, had visited her one last time in the hospital. "Isabella, this isn't what we planned. I can't do this to you or to me." The words still echoed in her mind, with the cruel clarity of a recording on loop. Alexander had left the engagement ring on the hospital bedside table, between a wilting bouquet of flowers and a box of tissues damp with the tears she couldn't stop shedding. "Isabella," her mother's voice pulled her from the trance. "Are you all right, my dear?" "I'm perfectly fine, Mum," she lied, adjusting the white blazer she had chosen because it gave her a professional, powerful look, as if power could compensate for what she had lost, just observing Grace shine on her special day. Indeed, her cousin was radiant in the center of the dance floor, twirling in the arms of her brand new husband, while the guests surrounded them in a perfect circle of borrowed happiness. Isabella had carefully avoided that part of the ballroom all night, staying on the periphery as always, like a spectator of her own life. At 32, Isabella Tan was the iris of Tan Holdings, a family enterprise that had built half of Singapore's iconic skyscrapers. From the age of 18, she had been prepared to assume leadership with an MBA from NUS Business School and practical experience in every department of the company. The accident had accelerated her ascension to the CEO position when her father decided to retire to care for his princess. Princess. The word tasted like ash in her mouth. "Dad, I don't need you to take care of me," she had told him 1,000 times. "I need you to trust that I can run the company." But even her professional success felt hollow when she came home each night to a silent apartment in Orchard Road, where the only company was her collection of architectural books and the echo of her own thoughts. A burst of children's laughter interrupted her melancholy. A small girl, about 6 years old, had escaped adult supervision and was running between the tables, chasing soap bubbles and guest had blown. Her purple dress fluttered like butterfly wings, and in her arms, she clutched a teddy bear worn soft with love. The girl stopped in front of Isabella, studying her with the unfiltered curiosity only children possess. "Why are you sad?" she asked, with a voice clear as a bell. Isabella blinked, surprised by the direct question. "I'm not. What makes you think I'm sad?" "You have eyes like Mummy when she went to heaven," the girl said, extending her teddy bear. "Teddy always helps me when I'm sad. Do you want him to help you?" Before Isabella could answer, a male voice, warm and slightly embarrassed, intervened. "Sophia, darling, you can't bother the guests." Isabella looked up and found herself facing the most attractive man she had seen in years. Tall, with an athletic but not intimidating build, slightly disheveled brown hair, and those eyes that had captivated her from across the room. He wore a blue sweater that enhanced the color of his eyes and jeans, which, though stylish, contrasted with the formality of the event. "He's not bothering me at all," Isabella said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. "What's your name, little one?" "Sophia Lim," the girl announced proudly. "And he's my daddy, Diego. He made this place look so pretty." Isabella looked at Diego with renewed curiosity. "Architect, interior designer actually," he responded, running a hand through his hair. "Well, trained architect, but lately I work more in events and commercial spaces." There was something in his voice, a note of resignation that Isabella recognized as the tone of someone who had had to adapt their dreams to unforeseen circumstances. "The work on the chandeliers is exceptional," Isabella commented, genuinely impressed. The way you distributed the lighting creates depth without generating harsh shadows. It's not easy to achieve that warmth in such a spacious area. Diego's eyes lit up with surprise and something that looked like gratitude. I didn't expect anyone to notice the technical details. Tan Holdings, Isabella introduced herself, extending her hand. Isabella Tan. We've been building Singapore for 3 generations. Diego Lim, he replied, taking her hand with a firm grip that didn't treat her like fragile porcelain. And it seems we have a lot to talk about regarding architecture. But the conversation was abruptly interrupted when a familiar, disapproving voice cut through the air like a knife. Isabella, dear, we need to talk now. Her Aunt Serene Tan approached with the determination of a guided missile, her expression so severe it could have turned champagne into vinegar. Behind her, Isabella could see her mother and other aunts whispering with worried faces. Isabella's stomach tightened. She knew that. Look, it was the same one she had seen when they discovered she was dating the gardener's son at 16, or when she announced she wanted to study architecture instead of business administration. Excuse me, Isabella murmured to Diego and Sofia, feeling the familiar sensation of familial claustrophobia beginning to close around her throat. But as she moved away, she heard Sofia's clear voice asking her father, Daddy, why does the older lady look so angry? Did the pretty lady do something wrong? And for the first time in months, Isabella Tan genuinely smiled. Isabella Tan, what were you thinking? Aunt Serene's voice cut the air like a whip as she dragged Isabella towards a secluded corner of the ballroom. Do you have any idea who you were talking to? Isabella's heart raced, but she held her chin high with the dignity she had perfected in 3 years of facing pitying glances. I was conversing with the architect responsible for the ballroom's design and his daughter. A perfectly civil conversation about work, by the way. Work? Serene's laugh sounded like breaking glass. Isabella, darling, we've looked into that man. Diego Lim is no successful architect. He's a freelancer who can barely support his daughter. He lost his job at a prestigious firm 2 years ago due to irregularities. The words hit Isabella like a cold slap. Her gaze instinctively drifted to where Diego was conversing with Sofia, who was now swaying her teddy bear while observing the champagne bubbles with childlike fascination. Don't be fooled by a pretty face and a sweet child, Serene continued, lowering her voice to a venomous hiss. Men like him see women like you and see a golden opportunity. A vulnerable heiress, alone, desperate for attention. Enough! Isabella felt heat rise up her neck, a mixture of humiliation and fury that threatened to choke her. I am not a 16-year-old girl. I am a 32-year-old woman who runs a multi-million-dollar company. I think I can judge people's intentions for myself. How did you judge Alexander's? The silence that followed was so dense that Isabella could hear the clinking of champagne glasses from across the ballroom. The mention of her ex-fiancé was like a punch to the stomach, and for a moment, she gasped for air. That was different, Isabella murmured, hating how her voice sounded small and broken. Different, Isabella, my dear. Alexander at least had his own fortune. This man, Serene, gestured towards Diego with contempt. This man lost everything when his wife died of cancer. Medical debts, overdue housing payments, part-time jobs. Do you really believe his interest in you is a coincidence? Isabella felt the familiar ground of her insecurities begin to tremble beneath her wheels. For 3 years, she had built walls around her heart, convincing herself that it was better to be alone than to be vulnerable again. And now, in a single 20-minute conversation, a stranger had managed to crack those defenses. Mom is worried, Serene added, softening her tone as she saw Isabella's defeated expression. We all are. We don't want to see you hurt again. Before Isabella could respond, the music changed to a slow ballad. The lights dimmed slightly, creating an intimate atmosphere that made couples instinctively draw closer on the dance floor. Isabella watched as her cousin Grace snuggled against her new husband, their faces glowing with that happiness that seemed so unattainable. Isabella. Diego's voice sounded directly behind her, and when she turned, she found him standing with an expression she couldn't decipher. Determination, nervousness. His eyes searched hers with an intensity that made her forget to breathe. I know this may sound improper, considering we've just met, he began. Isabella noticed his hands clenching and unclenching nervously at his sides. But I was wondering if you would dance with me. The entire ballroom seemed to stop. Isabella could feel dozens of eyes on them, hear the collective murmur of surprise that swept through the nearby tables like a wave. Her Aunt Serene let out a choked sound of shock. Diego, Isabella felt the words catch in her throat. Part of her wanted to say yes with every fiber of her being, but the voice of insecurity screamed all the reasons why this was a terrible idea. I don't think that's a good idea. Why? He asked, taking a step closer. His voice was soft but firm. Because you're in a wheelchair? The direct question caught her by surprise. In the last 3 years, no one had been so straightforward about her disability. Everyone danced around the subject with euphemisms and uncomfortable silences. Among other things, Isabella murmured, feeling the heat rise up her cheeks. Isabella. Diego knelt beside her chair, bringing his eyes to the same level as hers, completely ignoring the scandalized looks of the guests. My wife died 2 years ago from cancer. The last 6 months of her life, she couldn't walk, could barely speak. And do you know what she missed the most? Dancing with me. Diego's voice cracked slightly, and Isabella saw familiar pain reflected in his eyes. We managed, he continued. I would hold her, she would move her arms, and we would dance in the hospital room. Because dancing isn't about your feet, Isabella. It's about the connection between two people. Isabella felt tears threatening to overflow. There was something in Diego's brutal honesty that disarmed all her defenses at once. I don't know how, she whispered. Me neither, he admitted with a small but genuine smile. But we can figure it out together. Without waiting for a verbal response, Diego stood up and extended his hand. Isabella looked at it for a moment that felt eternal, aware that taking that hand would fundamentally change something between them. Slowly, she put her hand in his. Diego gently guided her to the edge of the dance floor, where the space was less crowded. With careful but confident movements, he leaned in and placed one hand on her back, the other holding her raised hand. Just follow me, he murmured, beginning to move slowly. Isabella discovered he was right. Dancing wasn't about the feet. It was about the way he looked at her as if she were the only person in the room. How his hand on her back made her feel protected without making her feel fragile. How her own body responded to the rhythm in a way she had forgotten was possible. For the first time in 3 years, Isabella Tan felt like a woman, not a victim, not an heiress, not an inspiration, just a woman, dancing with a man who truly saw her. The tears finally overflowed, but they were tears of liberation, not pain. Thank you, she whispered against his chest. Thank you, he replied, his voice rough with emotion. When the song ended, the applause that followed was polite but tinged with discomfort. Isabella could see her family's expressions: shock, disapproval, and something that might have been fear. Isabella, Diego began, but was interrupted by the abrupt arrival of Serene and Isabella's mother. Excuse me, Mr. Lim, Serene said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. We need to take Isabella. Urgent family matter. Diego looked at Isabella with a question in his eyes, but she didn't know how to respond. The magical bubble had burst, and reality seeped in like icy water. Of course, Diego said, taking a step back. Isabella, it was a pleasure meeting you. As her family led her away, Isabella heard Sophia's small voice. Daddy, why did they take the pretty lady away? Did we do something wrong? 20 minutes later, Isabella was sitting in the family car as her mother drove through the nighttime streets of Singapore. The silence was deafening until Serene turned from the passenger seat. Isabella, there's something else you need to know about Diego Lim, something that will completely change your perspective on what happened tonight. Isabella's heart sank. She knew, with the cold certainty of a premonition, that whatever her aunt was about to say would shatter the first genuine happiness she had felt in years. What? She whispered. Serene held up her phone, displaying a photo that turned Isabella's blood to ice. We didn't just investigate his professional past, darling. We also looked into why he approached you tonight. The photograph on Serene's phone showed Diego in what appeared to be a legal office, signing documents with a somber expression. The date in the bottom corner indicated it had been taken just a week ago. What is this? Isabella asked, though a part of her dreaded the answer. His late wife's parents, the Herreras, are fighting for custody of Sofia, Serena explained triumphantly. They allege that Diego cannot provide her with financial stability. The process has been in the family justice courts for 6 months, Isabella. 6 months where he has been desperately looking for a financial way out. Isabella felt as if the air had been ripped from her lungs. The image of Diego kneeling by her chair, his words about dancing, the sincerity in his eyes. Had it all been an act? And, look at this, Serene continued, sliding her finger across the screen. This is the guest list for Grace's wedding. Guess who wasn't originally included? Diego Lim was added just 2 weeks ago after someone mentioned your confirmed attendance. The car stopped at a red light, and Isabella took the pause to process the information. Her mind, trained by years of corporate negotiations, began to connect the dots with painful clarity. Isabella, darling. Her mother spoke for the first time since leaving the hotel. I know you felt something special tonight, but you must understand that there are men who take advantage of women in vulnerable situations. I'm not vulnerable, Isabella retorted automatically, but the words sounded hollow even to herself. No. Serene turned completely towards her. When was the last time someone asked you out? When was the last time you felt desired as a woman? Tonight, an attractive man pays you attention, and suddenly you forget all caution. The words were like slaps, but Isabella couldn't refute them. The truth was, it had been over 3 years since she had felt so alive, so feminine, so normal. The rest of the drive home passed in tense silence. Once in her Orchard Road apartment, Isabella headed directly to her study, where the walls were covered with architectural plans and models of Tan Holdings projects. Normally, this space calmed her, but tonight, every line and every structure reminded her of the conversation she had had with Diego about design and lighting. Her phone vibrated a message from an unknown number. It's Diego. I got your number through Grace. I hope you don't mind. I just wanted to make sure you were okay after our conversation ended so abruptly. D. Isabella stared at the screen for long minutes, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. What could she reply? Confront him directly about Sophia's custody? Ignore the message? Pretend nothing had changed? Finally, she typed, I'm fine. It was an intense night. The reply came almost immediately. Could we talk? Not on the phone, in person. I know it must seem strange, but I feel there are things you need to know. Isabella frowned. Did he know about her family's investigation? What kind of things? About why I really left my job, about Sophia, about why tonight meant so much to me. Please, Isabella, an hour of your time. Against all logic, Isabella found herself typing the address of a cafe near her office and agreeing to meet the next afternoon. The Malasaña cafe was small and discreet, the kind of place where they could talk without being interrupted by acquaintances from Singapore's high society. Isabella arrived 15 minutes early, chose a corner table, and ordered a kopi that cooled as she waited. Diego entered exactly at the agreed time, but he looked different from the night before. The lines of tiredness around his eyes were more pronounced, and he carried a folder of documents under his arm, suggesting this conversation would be more serious than she had anticipated. Thank you for coming, he said, sitting opposite her. I know after last night you probably think I know about Sophia's custody, Isabella interrupted, deciding that direct honesty was the only option. And I know your financial situation is complicated. Diego froze for a moment, then let out a bitter laugh. Of course you do. Your family wouldn't get where it is without doing its due diligence. So, you didn't lie to me last night, you just omitted relevant information. Isabella. Diego leaned forward, his eyes searching hers with desperate intensity. Yes, I'm in a legal battle for my daughter's custody. Yes, I've had financial difficulties since Maria died, but what happened between us last night had nothing to do with that. How can I believe you? Isabella felt her voice crack slightly. How can I know what's real and what's strategy? Diego opened the folder and began to pull out documents. Because I'm going to show you everything, he said. Maria's medical reports, the hospital bills I'm still paying, the custody lawsuit documents, my complete financial situation, everything. Isabella observed the papers with a mixture of fascination and horror. It was like looking into someone's soul, seeing their most private wounds exposed under the fluorescent light of a cafe. Maria was sick for 2 years, Diego explained, his voice barely a whisper. The last 6 months were hell. I left the firm where I worked to care for her 24 hours a day. I sold our apartment to pay for experimental treatments, and when she died, his voice broke. Isabella felt a powerful urge to reach for his hand, but restrained herself. Maria's parents never forgave me for taking her away from them when we married, he continued. They think if she had been in Penang, closer to them, she might have survived. They initiated the custody process immediately after the funeral, claiming I'm an unfit father. Isabella studied the legal documents with a professional eye. The lawsuit was detailed and ruthless, painting a portrait of Diego as an irresponsible man who had ruined his daughter's life through pride and negligence. Why are you showing me this? She asked. If you really need money, showing me how desperate you are doesn't seem like the best strategy. Because I'd rather you reject me knowing the truth than accept me based on a lie, Diego replied. And because last night, for the first time in 2 years, I felt like a man again, not a broken widower or a father about to lose his daughter. Diego's phone rang at that moment. Looking at the screen, His expression transformed into pure panic. "It's Sophia's school," he murmured, answering immediately. "Yes? What? How high is the fever?" "Yes, I'm on my way now." He hung up and began frantically putting away the documents. "Sophia is sick. I have to go get her, but I have a meeting with a potential client in an hour that I can't cancel. It's the first important project in months, and if I lose it, go for your appointment," Isabella said before she could stop herself. "I'll go for Sophia." Diego froze, looking at her as if she had proposed something impossible. "Isabella, I can't ask you that. We barely know each other." "You're not asking me?" she retorted, already pulling her keys from her handbag. "I'm offering. What's the school's name?" 40 minutes later, Isabella was in the car with Sophia, curled up in the back seat, clutching her teddy bear as she battled a fever. The girl had recognized Isabella immediately and, to both their surprise, had cried with relief at seeing her. "Where's Daddy?" Sophia asked in a hoarse voice. "He's working, but he'll be here soon," Isabella replied, adjusting the air conditioning temperature. "Meanwhile, we'll take care of you." In Diego's apartment, a modest HDB flat in Ang Mo Kio, which contrasted dramatically with the luxury Isabella was accustomed to, she managed to give Sophia medicine, prepare her a light soup, and apply cold compresses to bring down the fever. While caring for the child, Isabella felt something she had never experienced: maternal instinct. The way Sophia snuggled against her, how she sought her hand when she was scared, how she whispered thank you in a small voice, was devastatingly sweet. Diego arrived at 8 p.m., finding them both asleep on the sofa, Sophia curled up against Isabella with the teddy bear in her arms. "Isabella," he whispered, gently touching her shoulder. She woke slowly, disoriented for a moment. "How is she?" Diego asked, looking at his daughter with concern. "Better. Her fever went down an hour ago. She ate a little soup and fell asleep." Diego sat heavily in a chair opposite the sofa, and Isabella could see the exhaustion in every line of his body. "How was the meeting?" she asked. "Good. Very good, actually." A small smile crossed his face. "It's an office renovation project. Not a huge deal, but it's stable work for 3 months." Isabella nodded, but something in her expression made Diego tense. "What's wrong?" he asked. "Diego," Isabella took a deep breath. "I want to help you financially with the lawyers, with the medical debts, with whatever you need to win Sophia's custody." Diego's expression changed instantly, hardening. "No." "But you could—" I said no. His voice was firm, almost cold. "Isabella, I thought we talked about this. I don't want your money. I don't want your pity." "It's not pity," Isabella protested. "It's—" "What?" "Love." Diego stood up, walking towards the window. "We've known each other for 24 hours, and you're already in love?" The words were like a slap. Isabella felt heat rise up her neck, a mixture of humiliation and fury. "I thought you saw me differently," she murmured, reaching for her keys. "And I thought you weren't like all the other rich women who think they can buy whatever they want," he replied without turning around. Isabella stood motionless for a moment, feeling as if her heart had been ripped from her chest. Then, with all the dignity she could muster, she walked towards the door. "Take good care of Sophia," she said without looking at him. "And good luck with custody. You'll need it." The door closed behind her with a definitive sound, leaving Diego alone with the echo of his own words and the feeling that he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. A week, 7 days, 168 hours, since Isabella had left Diego's apartment with a broken heart and bruised pride. A week in which she had buried her pain in contracts, board meetings, and expansion projects that demanded her attention 24 hours a day. But no matter how much she tried to concentrate on the plans for Tan Holdings' new residential complex, her mind invariably returned to a 6-year-old girl in a purple dress with a teddy bear, and to a man who had made her feel alive for the first time in 3 years, only to destroy that feeling with words sharper than any scalpel. "Isabella, are you listening to me?" Her father's voice pulled her from her reverie. She was sitting in the family company's boardroom, surrounded by the expectant faces of the board members. The plans for the Vista Park project were spread across the mahogany table, but Isabella had completely lost herself in thought. "Sorry, Dad. I was analyzing construction costs," she lied, straightening in her chair. "I was saying we've received 3 proposals for the interior design of the complex," Ramon Tan continued, adjusting his glasses. "All from prestigious firms. I wanted your opinion on which we should choose." Isabella studied the proposals with a professional eye, but a rebellious part of her mind wondered what Diego would have created with a project of that magnitude. His ideas on lighting and space distribution had shown an artistic sensitivity that large firms, however prestigious, often lost in favor of pure functionality. "The Vanguard studio proposal is fine," she commented distractedly. "Though I wonder if we shouldn't consider emerging talents. Sometimes innovation comes from unexpected places." Her Aunt Serene, present as always at important meetings, exchanged a meaningful glance with her father. "Isabella, darling," she said with that carefully modulated voice she used when she was about to deliver bad news. "Speaking of emerging talents, I've been making some calls about your acquaintance from the wedding." Isabella's stomach tightened. She had been expecting this conversation, but not in the middle of a board meeting. "What kind of calls?" she asked, though she dreaded the answer. "Well, after what happened last week, I thought it would be prudent to ensure Diego Lim couldn't take advantage of other vulnerable women." Serene sounded almost proud of herself. "So, I contacted some contacts in the construction sector." Isabella felt her blood run cold. "What did you do?" "I just made sure the main contractors in Singapore knew that Diego Lim isn't a safe investment," Serene explained. "His history of incomplete projects, his financial instability, the rumors about his behavior, well, let's just say he won't have access to the city's most lucrative contracts anymore." The silence that followed was deafening. Isabella looked around the table and saw expressions of approval on the faces of the board members. To them, this was simply a measure of family protection, a way to keep fortune hunters away. To Isabella, it was a betrayal. "Incomplete projects?" she asked in a dangerously low voice. "What incomplete projects?" "Isabella, don't get upset," her father intervened. "Serene was just protecting the family's interests." "I'm not upset. I'm indignant." Isabella felt fury rise through her chest like molten lava. "How dare you destroy a man's career based on lies?" "They're not lies," Serene retorted. "His financial situation is real. His legal battle for custody is real. His financial situation is a consequence of caring for his dying wife." Isabella slammed her palm on the table, making several board members jump. "Since when is that a crime?" "Isabella, calm down." Her father used the condescending tone she had hated all her life. "I understand you feel attracted to this man, but you must think with your head, not your heart." "With my head?" Isabella let out a bitter laugh. "Do you think I'm making this decision with my heart?" "Dad, I've run this company for 3 years. I've increased our profits by 40%. I've overseen the construction of 12 residential projects and 3 commercial complexes. Do you really think I can't distinguish between romantic interest and business judgment? Then why are you defending someone who rejected you so cruelly?" Serene asked. The question was like a dagger straight to the heart. Isabella felt tears threatening to overflow, but she swallowed them with fierce determination. "Because he was right," she admitted. "He was right to reject my money. He was right to question my motives. And he was right not to trust me, because apparently, I belong to a family that destroys lives for fun." She stood from her chair, gathering all her project documents. "From this moment on, Isabella," her father said in a severe voice, "any professional or personal contact with Diego Lim is forbidden. As a board member and as my daughter, I expect you to respect this decision." Isabella stopped at the boardroom door, turning slowly to face her family. "Dad," she said with a calm that dramatically contrasted with the emotional storm raging inside her. "I am 32 years old. I run a multi-million-dollar company. I pay my own bills. I make my own decisions. And I live my own life." She paused, letting her words sink in. "And if you ever interfere with my personal decisions again, I will transfer my shares in the company to an independent trust and go open my own firm. Have I made myself clear enough?" The shock on her family's faces was almost comical. In 23 years working for Tan Holdings, Isabella had never directly challenged her father's authority. "Isabella," Ramon began. "I'm not finished," she interrupted. "Diego Lim is a talented architect who deserves to be judged by his work, not his personal situation. If this company cannot recognize talent when it sees it, then perhaps it's time I looked for new opportunities." She walked out of the boardroom with her head held high, ignoring the scandalized whispers that followed her exit. But once in the privacy of her office, she allowed herself to collapse emotionally for the first time in years. The tears came in waves, not just for Diego, but for all the loneliness, frustration, and helplessness accumulated during 3 years of living under her family's overprotective scrutiny. She had become a gilded prisoner, protected from everything, including the possibility of genuine happiness. Her phone rang. A message from an unknown number. "Miss Tan, I'm Madam Ong, Diego's neighbor from 3B. He gave me your number a few days ago in case there was an emergency with Sophia. You need to come now. Isabella felt her heart pound. Without thinking twice, she grabbed her keys and headed for the lift. The journey to Angmokio felt eternal. Isabella managed to drive with trembling hands, while her mind created dozens of catastrophic scenarios. Had something happened to Diego? To Sofia? Why would the neighbor sound so urgent? She arrived at the HDB block and went up to the 3rd floor as fast as her wheelchair allowed. She knocked on the door of apartment 3A, but there was no answer. The silence from the other side was unsettling. "Diego!" she shouted, knocking harder. "Sofia!" The door to apartment 3B opened, and an older woman in an apron with a worried expression peered out. "Are you Isabella?" Madame Ong asked. "Yes, I received your message." "What's happening? Where are Diego and Sofia?" Madame Ong's expression saddened. "They took the girl yesterday morning," she said softly. Her grandparents came with court papers and a social worker. Diego was crying when they took her. Isabella felt as if the world had stopped. "And Diego, where is he?" "He left early this morning with 2 suitcases, Madame Ong replied. "He didn't say where he was going, but he looked broken, completely broken." Isabella looked at the closed door of apartment 3A, and for the first time in her life, she understood what true desperation meant. "Did he leave any message, any address?" Madame Ong shook her head. "He just asked me to tell you thank you for taking care of Sofia and that he wished things had been different." Isabella stood in the empty corridor, looking at the door that now protected only memories and the echo of what could have been. For the first time in her life, all her money, all her influence, all her power were useless. Diego had disappeared, taking with him the only real chance of happiness she had had in 3 years, and all because of her own family. Isabella spent the entire night in her study, surrounded by legal documents, phone numbers of lawyers specializing in family law, and a fierce determination she hadn't felt in years. If her family could use their influence to destroy, she could use hers to rebuild. By 6 a, she had already made 5 strategic calls. The first had been to Alexandra Lim, the best family lawyer in Singapore, and Isabella's university classmate. The second, to the private investigator Tan Holdings, used to verify the backgrounds of potential partners. The next 3 had been to contacts in the judicial system who owed her favors for generous charitable donations. "Alexandra, I need you to review a custody case being processed in the Family Justice Courts, case number FJDC," Isabella said on the phone while reviewing the documents she had managed to obtain. "Diego Lim versus the Herrera family. I want to know exactly what arguments they are using and how we can refute them." "Isabella, since when are you interested in custody cases?" Alexandra asked with professional curiosity. "Since I discovered my family has been sabotaging an innocent man," Isabella replied with an honesty that surprised even herself. 2 hours later, Isabella had a complete picture of Diego's legal situation. Maria Herrera's parents had built a solid case on paper. Diego had debts, worked irregularly, and had unnecessarily abandoned his stable job to care for his sick wife. But Isabella, with her business-trained eye, could see the cracks in their argument. "The problem," Alexandra explained during their meeting at the law firm, "is that they already obtained temporary custody. Diego can only see Sofia 2 hours on Sundays under supervision. The final hearing is scheduled for 3 days from now." 3 days? Isabella felt panic. "Can't we postpone?" "Isabella," Alexandra gently interrupted her. "To postpone, we would need significant new evidence or a material change in Diego's circumstances. And frankly, unless he can demonstrate immediate financial and emotional stability, what if he had a stable job, a long-term contract with a prestigious company?" Alexandra raised an eyebrow. "That would help significantly. But Isabella, don't tell me you're thinking of offering Diego a job." "Exactly what I'm thinking," Isabella interrupted. "Not as charity, because the courts can see through that. Not as charity." A small but genuine smile crossed her face for the first time in days. "As a smart business investment, Tan Holdings is expanding into interior design and sustainable architecture. We need a creative director with an innovative vision." Finding Diego proved easier than expected. The private investigator located him in a cheap hostel near Lavender MRT station, working as a freelance designer for small businesses in the neighborhood for ridiculously low amounts. Isabella arrived at the hostel at 7 p., her heart beating like a war drum. The receptionist, an older man with a tired expression, was initially reluctant to give information about guests until Isabella mentioned she was a lawyer, technically true, though not practicing working on Diego's custody case. Room 204 was small, Spartan, and smelled of cheap disinfectant. When Diego opened the door, Isabella almost didn't recognize him. He had lost weight, had deep dark circles under his eyes, and his expression was that of a man who had lost all hope. "Isabella," his voice was barely a whisper. "How did you find me?" "That doesn't matter," she replied, pushing her chair into the room. "What matters is that tomorrow you have a hearing that can change your life, and you're going to lose if you don't do something drastic." Diego sat heavily in the only chair in the room. "I already lost," he said with a resignation that broke Isabella's heart. "The Herreras are right. I can't give Sofia the life she deserves. I don't have a stable job. I don't have my own home. I don't have—" "You have talent," Isabella interrupted firmly. "You have experience. You have a daughter who loves you desperately, and now you have a job offer." Diego looked at her with suspicion. "Isabella, I already told you I don't want your charity, and I told you it's not charity." Isabella opened her laptop and began to show him documents. "It's a business partnership. TAN Holdings is expanding into interior design and sustainable architecture. We need a creative director with an innovative vision." Diego studied the plans Isabella showed him. The Vista Park residential complex, 3 commercial projects under development, and a new line of social housing that the company was considering. "The base salary is $60,000 annually," Isabella continued, "plus participation in department profits, a 5-year contract, with an option to purchase company shares after the 3rd year." "Why?" Diego asked, his voice trembling. "After how I treated you last week. After everything that's happened. Why?" Isabella took a deep breath. "Because when I cared for Sofia that night, for the first time in my life, I felt what it could be like to be a mother. Because when we danced, for the first time in 3 years, I felt like a woman, not a victim. And because," her voice broke slightly, "because I love you, Diego. I love you, and I love your daughter. And I'm not going to stand by while my family destroys your life to protect mine." Diego stood motionless for a long moment, his eyes searching hers as if trying to find some sign of lies or manipulation. "Isabella," he whispered finally, "if I do this, if I accept your offer, there's no turning back. The courts are going to investigate everything. Your family's going to hate you. The press is going to have a field day with the story of the disabled heiress and the broke architect." "Let them talk," Isabella replied, with a determination that surprised even herself. "I've spent 3 years living in a glass box, protected from everything, including happiness. It's time I lived my own life." The custody hearing was at 10 a.m. on Thursday. Isabella had spent the previous 2 nights working with Alexandra to prepare Diego's defense, compiling evidence of his new employment, character testimonies from former colleagues, and medical reports demonstrating that he had exceptionally cared for his sick wife. But the most powerful moment came when Isabella herself testified. "Your Honor," she said from the stand, looking directly at the judge, "I have observed Diego Lim interact with his daughter. I have seen how she adores him, how she trusts him, how she flourishes under his care. As a woman who has never had children, but who had the privilege of caring for Sofia for a few hours, I can testify that this child needs her father, and he needs her." The judge ruled in favor of Diego an hour later, when Sofia ran to her father upon leaving the courthouse shouting, "Daddy! Daddy!" With tears of joy, Isabella knew she had made the right decision. But that night, as they celebrated in a small family restaurant, Diego asked the question he had been avoiding. "Isabella, this thing we have, this partnership, this feeling, how is it really going to work? Your world and mine are completely different. Your family, your social position, your money. How can we build something real when everything is so unbalanced?" Isabella looked at Sofia, who was coloring with crayons in a notebook, completely oblivious to the complexities of the adult world. Then she looked at Diego, saw the vulnerability and love in his eyes, and knew that the moment of truth had arrived. The question hung in the air like a sword of Damocles, awaiting an answer that would determine the future of all of them. 6 months later, the October sun bathed the facade of the Esperanza Community Hub with a golden light that made the solar panels installed on the roof shine. Isabella observed the building from her car, still surprised at how it had evolved from the initial plans Diego had drawn on paper napkins during those long nights of planning in his Angmo apartment. Esperanza Community Hub, a project by TAN Holdings and Lim Sustainable Architecture. Read the plaque by the main entrance. The name had been Sofia's idea, who insisted that if her daddy and mummy Isabella were building something together, it had to be called Esperanza, like her great-aunt who had passed away last year. The irony that the project bore the name of the aunt who had tried to separate them was not lost on Isabella. Serene Tan had been one of the last to accept the relationship, but even she had admitted, after seeing the professional success of the partnership, that perhaps I was wrong about that man's intentions. "Isabella, look what I found." Sophia's voice pulled her from her reflections. The girl ran towards her with a bouquet of wildflowers she had picked from the small garden surrounding the center. In these 6 months, Sophia had grown both physically and emotionally. She was no longer the shy, scared child Isabella had met at the wedding. Now she was a confident, joyful 7-year-old. "They're beautiful, darling," Isabella said, accepting the flowers. "Shall we put them in Daddy's office vase?" "Yes, and I also want to show him my drawing of the center." Sophia pulled a folded sheet of paper from her backpack. "I drew all the ramps Daddy made so you can go everywhere." Isabella felt her eyes well up with tears. The center's design had been a revelation for her. For the first time in her professional life, she had worked on a completely accessible project from conception. Diego had insisted that every entrance, every bathroom, every common space be navigable for wheelchairs. But he had done it with such architectural elegance that functionality did not compromise beauty. "Let's go find Daddy," Isabella said, taking Sophia's small hand. "He must be finishing the last details for the inauguration." They found Diego in the main hall, supervising the installation of the last pieces of LED lighting. He had lost that constant expression of desperation he had when they met and had gained something. Isabella took weeks to identify. Peace. It was the expression of a man who had found his place in the world. "How are the preparations coming along?" Isabella asked, approaching him. "Perfect," Diego replied, leaning down to kiss her softly. "The catering will arrive in an hour. The band is setting up equipment on the terrace, and I think even your father is excited to see the project finished." It was true. Ramon Tan had initially been skeptical about his daughter's philanthropic venture, but when he saw the first quarter numbers for Lim Sustainable Architecture, his attitude changed drastically. The department they had created within Tan Holdings already had a 6-month waiting list for sustainable residential projects. "Daddy, Mommy Isabella, can you come see something?" Sophia tugged at both their hands towards the corner of the hall, where a small play area had been installed. Isabella still got emotional every time Sophia called her Mumi Isabella. The transition had been natural, without pressure or forced expectations. One day, Sophia had simply started introducing her that way to her classmates, and the expression had stuck. "What do you want to show us, princess?" Diego asked. "I want you to dance," Sophia announced with the seriousness of an orchestra conductor. "Like the first time I saw you, but this time I'm going to be here to watch you." Isabella and Diego exchanged glances. Their first dance at Grace's wedding had become a kind of family legend, the foundational moment of their love story. "There's no music, darling," Isabella pointed out. "Yes, there is." Sophia ran to a small Bluetooth speaker and, with the technological dexterity of modern children, began to play a soft ballad from Diego's phone. The music filled the space, and for a moment, Isabella was transported to that wedding ballroom, filled with crystal chandeliers and looks of disapproval. But this time it was different. This time, when Diego extended his hand, she took it without doubt, without fear, without the feeling of acting against the whole world. They danced slowly in the center of the empty hall, surrounded by the walls they had designed together in the building that was a testament to their partnership, both professional and personal. Isabella felt completely at peace, completely at home. "You know," Diego murmured against her ear. "I've never thanked you." "For what?" Isabella asked, confused. "For seeing in me what I couldn't see. For believing in us when I was afraid. For teaching me that love isn't about what we can give or receive, but about what we can build together." Isabella felt tears of happiness running down her cheeks. "I also have something to thank you for," she whispered. "For teaching me that being strong doesn't mean being alone. For showing me that my wheelchair doesn't define my limits. For giving me a family." The music ended, but they remained embraced for a moment longer, aware that Sophia was watching them with the biggest smile in the world. "You know what?" Sophia said, breaking the moment. "I think you two love each other very, very much." "You think so?" Diego asked with feigned seriousness. "Yes, and I think you should get married so I can be the flower girl." Isabella and Diego looked at each other and burst into laughter. The prospect of marriage had been discussed in whispers for the past few weeks, but hearing Sophia express it so naturally gave them the final validation they needed. "You know what, princess?" Isabella said, looking at Diego with shining eyes. "I think that's the best idea I've heard in a long time." An hour later, the center was filled with guests for the official inauguration. The entire Tan family, clients of the company, beneficiaries of the center, and a small representation of the architectural press. Isabella watched from the entrance as Diego explained the design features to a group of journalists, his passion and knowledge evident in every word. Her father approached, leaning a hand on the back of her chair. "Isabella," Ramon said softly, "I want to apologize." She turned, surprised by the sincerity in his tone. "You were right about Diego. You were right about following your heart. And you were right about living your own life," he continued. "Sometimes, when we want to protect someone so much, we end up caging them." Isabella took her father's hand. "Dad, you just wanted to take care of me. I understand. But you didn't need to be taken care of," he smiled. "You needed to be trusted. And from now on, that's exactly what I'll do." As the sun set over Singapore, Isabella observed her new life with a sense of completeness she had never experienced. It wasn't perfect. There were still challenges, moments of uncertainty, and the occasional curious glance on the street. But she had learned that happiness is not found in perfection, but in the daily choice to build something beautiful with the people you love. Diego approached, taking her hand as Sofia squeezed in between them. "Ready to go home?" he asked. "Yes," Isabella replied, looking at her chosen family. "I'm ready." Because sometimes, love comes when you least expect it, in the most unexpected way, but always at the exact moment when your heart is ready to receive it. And when that happens, differences, limitations, or obstacles don't matter. True love finds a way to build bridges where others see abysses.